All right. So I apologize for the strange light, but it's just what we're dealing with here. So we'll first remove the air filter nut. The fuel filter, the stone one, that's in there. There's a spring in the back that keeps the stone up against the inlet. Here there's a gasket. There's a series of screws, but let's go ahead and remove the choke here. See how this, I should get my other one, but it's on the shelf. See how the coil is all tight? This should be more expanded. And as this rotates, it in turn causes the butterfly to open and close. And this one's stuck, so there we go. So part of what we're going to try to do is get this so that it closes all the way without an issue. I know what the problem is. The throttle has to be open in order for the butterfly to be free to close completely. It appears that the last time I rebuilt this rebuilt this carburetor, I did a fairly good job. So this should go fairly well. Needing those pliers. There's a tiny clip that holds this linkage. And that screw is definitely, that should be on there snug, more snug. We have another clip there, which will free that part of the linkage. It's actually pretty good. So let's take out this one. I guess it's just held in. This is the actual accelerator pump. So when you do step on the gas, and you'll see when we get inside, there's a plunger that squirts gas out of a small well through jets that are in here. In the venturi, or the center area of the carburetor. I think out of all of the Rochester single barrel Corvair carburetors I've done in the past 20 years, I kind of feel like do it blindfolded. That would be a good competition to have at a Corvair convention, is the blindfolded reassembly of the Rochester one barrel. Other than on turbos, the only carburetor that ever came on a Corvair. don't believe that's holding down, but we may as well remove it. Maybe it does. Feels like a longer screw going down from the top into the body of the carburetor. How about a screw down that hole? Will we buy that? Sure enough, there's a slot. Sixteenths. Okay, so here's the top assembly. We have needles here that go down into areas that control at what point or how much fluid. Again, these needles are something that Corvairs don't have. So here again is the aforementioned accelerator pump, goes down into a well. Jet assemblies here. So squirters, this is in I believe these are the primaries, these are the secondaries, so these are what get the initial shot of fuel. These independent floats go down into the bowls here and here, and there's certainly some yuckiness there that should be dealt with. And these are weights. The secondaries open up, I believe, via vacuum, and wouldn't swear to that at this point, but the counterweights keep them closed, and then vacuum under high throttle opening causes these to open up. So what are we checking? Well, one of the things we're going to want to check is to make sure that the needles and seats that are going to these floats will not allow fuel to flow into the bowls when the floats are in their topmost location, and that shuts off, and so you don't overfill these bowls. So the greatest intent here was not to totally disassemble the carburetor, although I am tempted to do that because there is kind of some stuff floating in there, but definitely wanted to make sure that needles and seats were working, the bowls were cleaned out, jets and so forth, all the passageways. So I guess it definitely is a good call to just continue down the road of disassemble. So from here, there's small pins come loose. That frees the jet. I'm going to go get another storage. Well, let's see what we got here. I'll put some of the ancillary parts in there. The needle. And let's do this. Let's put this back in, and go ahead and test the needle and seat. So if I don't have to remove the seat from the top, I shan't. Alright, so in this case we're upside down, so this would be the situation where the float is at its highest point when it's flipped over and on the carburetor. So we blow through this opening and see if we can hear air going out, which would indicate that the seats are leaking. Nope, that's good. So now I'm going to raise each of these floats independently and we'll hear how air is now rushing through. That shuts off. So if the camera was on my face would be red at this point. So try to keep the needles with the associated floats. So what I'm going to do is orient this tub the way the carburetor is now oriented, with the fuel intake on the right side. So this one, and you know, I could just write that on there. So this is intake, and hopefully I'll remember that intake means it's the side that the fuel intake comes in. So we'll leave these seats in there. Remove this gasket. So let's flip this over and take these needles out. We access them underneath each of these plates, retained with a single screw. Tiny pick. Little picks. Trick is to get this plate off and not impale myself with the pick. There we go. So intake side. This is flipped around. There we go. This nifty little assembly, spring loaded. I think as vacuum kicks in. Again, this is the anti-intake side. Okay. So short of this screw, oh yes, and the accelerator pump, which will be replacing this very old seal cup. Looks like the means of getting the accelerator pump off is removing that screw. Which acts as the pivot. That allows this to come loose, that to come off. Put those together in here. I'm sure that the manual has nice pictures, but get this on video as to how it's oriented. There's a bit of it's not just a straight S, it's got a bit of a bend to it in an odd place, but we'll set that off to the side there. Can remove the accelerator pump. By the way, the accelerator pump, the reason they have springs like this is that when you really jam it hard, you don't want to fire in or force in the gas. So this spring, its job is to momentarily allow for the throttle to move while not pressing or not forcing the maximum amount of gas through the small hole into the jet areas. Kind of regulates how much you're sending through the jets, preventing that from going full. So that turned out to be moving quite nicely. I remember this was jammed up at some point. So now we'll turn our attention to the base of the carburetor. Let's get this piece of linkage off. Should make it a little easier to. Light is a wonderful thing. But having this out of the way makes it easier to set. Some of the choke regulations going on here. Maybe as we reassemble it, I can explain that in greater detail. Or not, if I don't care to. So that allows this lever, this linkage, and it was oriented with a shorter end towards the choke and then the longer end towards the throttle plate or the butterfly plate. So there are two screws that hold the choke assembly into to the carburetor. We're going to want to remove those. Accessing them. One is here and one is buried underneath here. This gasket goes with the choke. So if I remember correctly, this should just pop out of the housing. There we go. Okay, and I'll definitely be cleaning this up, lubricating it. Be nice to have that turn a little more freely. Put that there, and then that exposes more screws. This is good that I'm ambidextrous. I'm going to go with this. Came out of the well underneath the accelerator pump and just provides a more positive return of the accelerator pump back up as the throttle linkage is released from being down to. Okay, so that rotates. Okay, it's down in that well that there's a screw. It appears that there's another one here. So I'll take that off. Get a smaller bladed. Not sure why GM thought they needed three screws to hold the choke on, but whatever. Going to stay captured in there. I'm fine with that. So now that the choke is removed, we can take these two screws out. This is part of the throttle kick down, as is this on this side. So we'll work from the other side. At some point we may want to put this in a vise. And we'll take this linkage out by lining up. There should be a notch. There it is. And that just pops off. Freeze that up. There's a whole lot going on. Many pieces to do one bit of work. Alright, so I guess it's time to rethink how seriously I think I need to disassemble all this. The intent is to get it into a can of carburetor cleaner. So let's take these off. They're part of that double set of ports. One again to the power brakes, and I don't know what that one goes to. Take off. These are the idle fuel adjustments through each of the primary venturis. And when they say 4 barrels, it's in effect 4 venturis, 2 primaries, and then the 2 secondaries. And as you turn these screws in and out, as you'll see there are needles here, they basically open and close a passageway. And probably don't close it all the way, but make that passageway larger or smaller for air, and the air draws a commensurate venturi which pulls fuel out of the bowls, and that's what your car then operates on when you have a carburetor, obviously, when your throttle plates are closed. There would be a small slot, I don't know if I can get this in, there's a small slot that allows air to bleed past. These are where basically the other ends of these needles go through, and that's part of that passageway. Behind this larger screw, I believe, is the main jet. It could be way off. The main jet could be in the bottom of the... This almost looks like something that I don't know, but we'll look it up. So, Tempest manual.